workers can do.
Welcome. I don't know if we got the whole front piece on, which was Mother Jones, but we'll first let me introduce the show, then I will introduce Mother Jones, and I will introduce my special guest here.
Okay.
So welcome. This is Organizing Tales. Organizing Tales is based on the television show, is based on the book of the same name, Organizing Tales, which is based on my experiences as a union organizer and simultaneously a security guard working at the Museum of Fine Arts from 1991 to 2007. And it is a compendium of stories and anecdotes and insights and how-tos from that experience. It's something which will be easily, I think, used by people in any organizing, not just labor organizing, but in any type of organizing, because the techniques are fairly wide-ranging, and certainly it is a timely book, one, I think as many of you can appreciate, a book that is meant for the time in which we are now in, which is a time of organizing. So that is a short description of our show. Now, Mother Jones, who you saw at the beginning, and I'm not sure we got the whole clip on, that's the only known clip of Mother Jones, who lived a fairly long time ago, and who was one of the patron saints of union organizing, labor union organizing. And she started labor union organizing in 1870, and in around 1897, she became known as Mother Jones, which also was the inspiration for a magazine of the same name, which you might know. But anyway, she was known as the most dangerous woman in America, and which obviously means that she was pretty successful at what she did, which was helping labor unions, especially the United Mine Workers, to organize during around the turn of the century. So today, the last thing I would like to remind people is I'm hoping that my email, I can't see it here, but I'm hoping that my email is on the bottom of the screen. That's mitchray@comcast.net, and I will welcome any comments, suggestions, or questions that you have. And you can send them to my email, and quite possibly we will relay that next week or whenever on the show here. And also, if you wish to read a full manuscript of the book Organizing Tales, I will give you a link to my WordPress blog where the whole manuscript can be accessed there. There is a PDF file of the book, and you just click on that, go down, the book scrolls down, and you can read the whole thing, or as much as you want. So now I'm going to introduce my special guest star, which is Muriel Heiberger, who was, for a long while, was one of the major workers in the field of immigrant rights in Massachusetts and in America. She organized MIRA, M-I-R-A, Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. And she was not only one who partook of many valiant fights, but she actually was victorious in many of them. And Muriel also happens to be my wife. And she's really my great inspiration in the fact that I entered into the field of social activism. I couldn't have done it certainly as well without Muriel, and I probably wouldn't have done it at all without Muriel.
Oh, thank you, dear. That's a lovely introduction.
So we will now do a short review of where we've been before. I will try not to go too long. If I do go too long, Muriel will remind me that
I will.
she has lots of experience of that. And so anyway, where we left off last time was when the members of the security guard force at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts had about 80% of them had handed in union cards. That's cards that you sign which means that you're saying you would like a union to represent you. It's a preliminary. It's not an ending. It's a preliminary, and it sets the stage for a vote by the membership. But to continue...
Well, can I ask, how did you get to the point, maybe you've told the audience this already, where you had such a tremendous upsurge of guards making the decision that, yes, they wanted to bring in a union to represent them?
That's a very good question, and the fact is, at least for me, but I think for many people, that when I came to the museum, it was kind of a paradisical job. It was, you got to be in the galleries of one of the great museums of the world looking at great paintings, and you got chicken feed for pay, but you got lots of good benefits. You got lots of them were the same benefits that the upper echelon got, and nobody bothered you that much. So it was a nice place to be. You were treated pretty well, even though you weren't paid very well. Then all of a sudden there was a sudden change, and that change when that change came from being treated well, we became treated somewhere in between prisoners in a jail and kindergarten students.
Wow.
But worst of all, what really turned the tide is that as a security guard, and especially since there's a lot of elderly people who are security guards, you need a little time off your feet there. Because as a security guard, you can imagine you're standing most of the day, and as an elderly security, but even the younger ones, some of them, you get problems with your feet, you get problems with your back, you get problems with your legs, and all of a sudden, it came down on high. You can't sit down in your chair, so that was the final straw.
Okay.
So anyway, as I stated, the cards, handing in the union cards, which is up to the point when you hand it in, it's kind of secret. Management doesn't know you're doing this stuff. But when you hand it in, the cat's out of the bag, and once the cat's out of the bag, and that's handed in, then you're going through a process that's going to lead to a vote by the membership on whether they really want the union or not.
Wow. So what happens during this process?
Well, the first thing that happens is management...
Or what happened at the MFA? I mean, never mind abstractly. What happened at the MFA when suddenly the cat was out of the bag and they knew that the guards were talking about wanting to bring in a union? They had handed in these cards. Then what happened?
What happened is, the first thing that happens is management realizes that they have a bunch of workers under them who are not happy with what they want and want to empower themselves. And the last thing that most management, very few exceptions, want to see happen is that their workers are empowered, that their workers have a voice in how the place is run.
So what did they do?
So the first thing they do is hire a union busting firm. That costs them about $200,000 right off the bat.
To just hire consultants?
To hire, yes, for a consultant to tell them how to stop these guys from getting their union in there. And basically, it's not like this is something that's rocket science or anything. It's pretty well cut and dried. And what the cut and dried is that you're going to give arguments to the workers, and these arguments are arguments that have pretty well been worked out over a period of time, so that any management is going to use the same arguments.
Arguments that are going to Make them feel that it's not worthwhile to have a union.
Right, exactly. It's going to tell you, oh, this is bad, that's bad. You know, this will. If you do this, this will happen. So
how did you respond to all that?
well, first let me say that that in order to inculcate this, they have all their supervisors work overtime 24/7, going around to every guard and telling them why they shouldn't join the union. You even get the head of human resources, which was, pardon me, some dismal lady there who very rarely smiled. Not all of a sudden she comes around and she's the best friend of guards, and she also tells them. You also have involuntary assemblies where they get together, and even someone up to the director of the museum will tell them.
So they revved up a big campaign to make sure that there would be no union there. And what did you guys do?
What we did, well, first of all, I got a little packet from the United Plant Guard Workers of America, which is the union that we were working with. And it told me they had these little pamphlets in it that told you what the arguments of management were, and it told you what the counter arguments would be. So I kind of, for instance, if management is going to say that if you unionize, your union dues are going to take away all your money. Whereas the fact of the matter is that data shows that generally speaking, union dues are so much higher than what people who are non-union workers.
You mean union? You don't mean dues. You mean union salaries.
Union salaries, yeah. Exactly. That union salaries are so much higher than the salaries that a normal worker would get, that the amount of dues you pay is not going to make you poorer, and you'll still be a richer person forever. Plus you have numerous other benefits that you wouldn't have, such as a grievance system, such as overtime and such, that you wouldn't get.
So you communicated these counter arguments to the security guards, so that when these folks came around to try to really intimidate them or scare them or discourage them, they had their own response already made.
Well, what as I said, I tried to do a preemptory strike there, and what I would do was we were very low tech at the time, so I would write out longhand. On a sheet of paper, I would write out the arguments that management was going to tell the guards, and then I would write out the counter arguments, the reason why that wasn't true, and I would hand that out before management got a chance to make their own arguments. So by the time they came around with, telling you that this and that and the other thing is going to happen, you've already been told that they're going to come around and tell you, and you also were told why that isn't true.
So how long did this campaign of intimidation go on, and then what was the next moment? What was the next step?
Well, this goes on for about a month and a half, or 2 months. It's a process, where they're going around and you're trying to, and you're doing your thing. And then comes the vote. So you have this little room where everybody goes to vote, and you have in the little room, you have this makeshift little place they go into to cast their votes, the voting booth, and in the voting booth you have this little box, and then each guard comes in and drops in their little piece of paper saying whether it's for or against. But watching this, you have one person from the National Labor Relations Board making sure everything goes all right, one person from management, and a third person who was a guard. Plus you have, obviously, standing around are lots of guards who are, at least the ones who aren't working at the time or who are on their breaks, waiting to see what's going to happen.
So were you there? You must have had your heart must have been in your, whatever that expression is, how it must have been in your mouth as this process.
Exactly. We were extremely, it was a huge suspense. for us. And as I should mention that even some of the management bigwigs were there, so they were waiting with bated breath to see what happened. Unfortunately for them, what happened was that 80-18 and a huge vote, when the union was voted in.
Oh my God, pretty resounding victory.
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, that was a huge, huge victory.
So how did they respond to that victory?
They didn't obviously they didn't like it
very much.
And obviously they went into damage control, so that they at least wanted to try and tell all the rest of the people, don't, these guys did it, but don't you do it. And I'm going to read just a little excerpt from the book. Well, actually, it's from the sheet that the director of the museum sent out immediately after the victory, and his name was Alan Shestak, and he says, "Needless to say, we are disappointed with this outcome, but we, nevertheless, respect the Guard's right to make this choice. Some of you may feel that if the Protective Service Department has a union representing them, that you need one as well. We hope that the majority of you agree that this is not the case."
Oh dear. So, yeah, definitely very anxious about the implications of this for the whole museum.
Indeed. They, however, the fact was that we were the only group in the museum that was courageous enough to do this.
Wow.
And further in the, as we get further in the book, it'll show that it was a very wise decision. Wow. But that's further along.
So after this great moment of jubilation from this phenomenal victory comes the hard part, I presume, of starting to negotiate your first contract. So tell us about that.
Well, that's exactly right. What happens is you negotiate. You have to go into the negotiation. We picked our negotiating team. There was some old guy from the United Plant Guard Workers who came ostensibly to help us with this. And I will give a brief description of this, of what happened from the book, and then we will continue on.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so our negotiating team consisted of Jill Abadamarco, Dave Hebden, Lisa Ray, and myself. Jill was a young artist not too long out of Massachusetts College of Art, just down the street from the museum. I remember her at that time as a breath of fresh air, young, sweet, and smart. Dave and Lisa were savvy, wise in the ways of the world, and quick learners in this all-too-new process. John Baumler, the negotiator from UPCA, was our frontman. He was crusty, knowledgeable, and more than a bit cynical. In retrospect, very cynical. UPCA had dredged him up out of a very comfortable retirement in Florida. Perhaps he needed some extra cash. Given what I know about negotiations, working with, or more accurately without, UPCA was bizarre. They taught us nothing about contract issues. We were left entirely on our own. Jill, David, Lisa, and myself. I think they gave us a sheet of things that are negotiable. For 3 or 4 hectic weeks, we met together and we came up with a huge contract offer sheet covering things relating to practically every issue on the sheet that we could think about or conjure up. We put in everything from gallery coverage to wages and almost hundreds of things in between. We had no idea that the chances of our getting 99% of those issues was zilch. Baumler never let on.
Wow.
Later, Dave deduced that since Baumler was probably being paid by the day, he was happy to draw things out as long as possible. And the same for the museum lawyer.
So here you are, sort of 4 really neophytes who had never negotiated, didn't really know the process and how to do it, and you're negotiating your first contract. So how long did that go on?
It went on forever.
It seemed like it.
It seemed like it, ad infinitum. I mean, we, as I said, we had all these issues, and from what I know now, what you really do when you negotiate is you take 3 or 4 of the issues that are most important to your members, and those are the issues that you take, and maybe you have, for frosting on the cake, a few other minor issues that you tack on. But we, as I say, we had like hundreds of issues, and so each negotiating session we would toss out all these, and then the next negotiating session they would come back with a counter offer. But being as you had so many issues, that this went on and on and on and on and on. But finally, we came to a time, unbelievably, where we were reaching the end.
Wow.
But it had gone on for so long, and it was so confusing, I think, to both sides, that neither could come to an agreement, although that's not that unusual not to come to an agreement. So we needed an arbitrator from the National Labor Relations Board, whom we got, and who actually was pretty good. And he went back and forth, and in a few days he actually got to a point, 4 o'clock in the morning, one day, where it looked like both sides were going to agree, and both sides did agree.
And so you had?
And we had a contract. Now, for us, we had come in with such high hopes. We thought we were going to get everything. And so the fact that we only got what we only got, which was pretty good, including that some people got a 6% pay raise.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. We didn't realize how amazing it was, and I don't think that I think management got confused by the process too that went on so long, and they didn't realize what a good contract we got either. And I think they realized it after a little over a year of having the contract going for the guards. They reneged on the contract.
Oh. Huh. So let me ask you, this is your first contract. None of you have ever negotiated a contract. You ultimately had to bring in the National Labor Relations Board or the, what do you call it? The
National Labor Relations.
Yeah, to actually make something happen. How did you feel at that time? Did the 4 of you feel triumphant? Did you feel you had succeeded? Did you feel like you had something great to bring back to the guards? Did the guards have to vote to accept the contract? And how did you feel about what you had accomplished? Did it feel like a victory?
I have to say that because of the way UPGOR presented, the fact that they presented a sheet and led us on to believe that you could get everything on the sheet without telling us that no, you're not going to get you should expect that. Not knowing that we felt disappointed. We did not realize that we had gotten ourselves a pretty darn good contract. And as I said, I don't think the museum realized that we had gotten ourselves a pretty darn good contract. But it wasn't really until later in the day when you will find out how this happened later times, when we actually, after the betrayal by UPGOR and after what happened after that.
I think that's another show that you're...
It is another
All right.
show. So we will leave...
All right, so we should leave that
we will leave,
for another show. But I think it's pretty amazing. You started as a small group, just talking about the things that were changing in the museum and your discontent. And out of those conversations, you found a union that could represent you. You somehow or other obviously worked well with all of the guards, because when you presented your cards saying we want to have a union, you had a tremendous response, which is pretty amazing. So that in itself is a great triumph, even if you didn't know enough to know that you had negotiated a good contract.
In retrospect, it was a great achievement. In retrospect, it's something to really be proud of. And in retrospect, being that it went on to something that is still going on is an amazing thing. So yes, this is a great thing. It's a great thing about organizing. If you organize and you actually get yourself a union or whatever, it's a wonderful thing.
So, Michael, you said at the very beginning, this is very timely. This is very timely for what's going on right now. And if there's one message that you could put out there to inspire somebody out there who is, wanting to do something in terms of labor organizing, what would the message be?
If I can do it, you can do it too.
Okay. So I know you've got a beautiful song to close this program.
We're going to close it up with Joan Baez and her sister Mimi singing "Bread and Roses," which once again is celebrating Women's History Month, because this comes from a strike in 1912, the Lawrence Textile Strike, which was mainly run by immigrant women, and which was a winning and famous strike of the time.
All right, so while you fiddle around with the technology, I'll tell a little bit about the song "Bread and Roses." Actually, I think it came from the speech that one of the immigrant women gave during that strike, that incredible strike in Lawrence. So, are we ready? Can we do it? There
Put
it
your hat
is.
on, honey. I'm going to ask Mimi to come and sing "Bread and Roses" with me.